This is the Sports Central Podcast.
Welcome, Jim Lampley, the great Jim Lampley, to the Sports Central Podcast. It is wonderful to have the opportunity to sit down with you. You have done everything in your career, and now you've got a book out, and I want to talk about that first. Aptly named, It Happened, A Uniquely Lucky Life in Sports Television. What made you decide to sit down and put your career into a book like this?
Well, just that I had cycled through virtually everything else I thought I might want to do. You know, I worked for different networks, all the major sports division, went to 14 Olympics, wound up doing news instead of sports. I had already had some news experiences at the network before I came here to Los Angeles and got converted into being a news anchor, and so on and so forth. So finished up with HBO Boxing in 2018 when the new owners decided they didn't want to sustain it anymore. Went back to my alma mater in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, taught a course for 5 semesters. Got tired of that for a variety of different reasons. And I had a friend in Chapel Hill who was the sports editor of the Daily Tar Heel when I was a freshman in 1966.
Wow.
And he said he has already had his name on 10 or 11 books as author or co-author. And we were having a conversation one night, and he said, "So what are you going to do next?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "It's time to write your book, and I will help you. I'll do the spade work of dealing with the publisher. I'll help you keep track of what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. I'll be your as-told-to author, and you absolutely need to write this book." And on that basis, I sat down, started thinking about it, and wrote a book.
I want to get into the process, but I actually wanted to ask you about the title, because it's a uniquely lucky life, right? Mm-hmm. Do you feel that way? You feel like this was luck that led you on this journey?
If you're a college graduate student, first year out of undergraduate school, you're doing small radio gigs and University of North Carolina football and basketball network ancillary stuff, and you get a chance to work for a television network in an unprecedented job, and you are the one person who is chosen out of a field of 432 candidates, and you are probably the person among the 432 who least fits all the credentials that the network had trumpeted that they were looking for, then you have no choice other than to see yourself as lucky. My career began with the most extraordinary lucky break imaginable. Oh, in addition to all of those contradictions, when they sent me to do an audition interview for the job, they unwittingly sent me to interview one of my biggest childhood heroes, a person about whom I already knew more than most members of his family knew, and I still had his number 10 University of Miami jersey hanging in my closet. So you put all of that together, lucky. I mean, lucky belongs in the title. There's no other way that I could honestly put that in context.
Lucky and immensely talented, I would say.
I think people saw that. I think, there was a recognition. At the first screening interview for ABC Sports for the first job of being on the sideline of a college football game, the person who conducted the interviews wrote arrogant, abrasive, alienated, antagonistic onto a sheet of paper.
Who, you?
Me. And the people above him overruled him because they said, no, he's the one who has the stuff to do this. Yeah. So, again, lucky. Maybe it was a preordained path in some way, shape, or form. I don't rule that out. But what happened to me is astonishing, and
in the book.
And of course, there's another reason why it happened is the title. And the other reason is that that's the critical phrase in my on-air call on HBO of George Foreman's knockout of Michael Moore in 1994 to become the oldest heavyweight champion in history at age 45. At a moment when George was our expert commentator on the HBO telecast. So we're covering our own colleague in the ring. He does this overwhelmingly historic thing. He's a massive underdog in the fight. There's no way this can happen. And now I've got 10 seconds, which is my lot in life as a blow-by-blow guy. I've got 10 seconds to try to put into context this extraordinarily meaningful historic event in heavyweight boxing, and what I come up with, because George had told me it was going to happen. George had predicted it to me. He had described to me exactly the way that he would knock Moore out. And it happens right in front of my eyes, and all I could think of was, it happened. It happened. And it was as though I was talking to George, but I was really trying to put into the smallest amount of words possible the meaning of what had taken place at that moment.
Is that something that you practice in advance?
Well,
do you try
no,
to?
no, you don't practice it in advance, but if at that moment you've been doing live events on network television for 20 years, you've practiced it 100 times or 150 times or whatever. You've practiced it a lot without thinking of it as practice because it was what you were doing on the air. So the bottom line is, I was equipped for that. And I was equipped for that by years of unique experience. Why did I get all those years of unique experience? Because I was lucky. I was the person who was chosen out of a 432-person talent hunt.
By the way, did you think it was going to happen?
Foreman's knockout of Moore?
Yeah.
No, I was absolutely stunned. And there was nothing, that happened in the 10th round. There was nothing in the first 9 rounds that would have given you any reason to believe whatsoever that George was on track for that. But he was setting Moore up the whole time. He was luring him in. He was gulling him into a position where Moore would feel safe, secure. I'm batting him around like a tennis ball. I'm not in any trouble here whatsoever until George ultimately finds his moment. Moore's right in front of him. He can practically breathe on him. And with his colossal historic power, George goes boom, boom, one straight left, one right hand, gone, out of there. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this count has reached 5, 6, 7. I better think of something to say. And what came out was, it happened.
It happened.
It happened. And now it's the title of my book.
For him being a friend and a colleague, did that put a different spin on it for you?
Well, spin. He is the subject of the prologue in the book. The prologue is about the 19-year-old me watching the 19-year-old him win his gold medal in Mexico City in 1968. The title comes from my call of his fight. There are other deep connections and frequent connections in the narrative between me and George because we worked together and spent time together. He died 2 weeks before the publication of the book.
Wow.
Stunning, out of the blue, unexpected death. I still tear up about it, okay? And his cover blurb on the back of the book was one of his last public acts. So it's overwhelming to me how connected he and I are, ironically, poetically, through this experience, and it only makes me miss him more.
You know, you can obviously, and understandably, this brings up emotion for you to talk about that. And when people write memoirs and they reflect on all the different chapters of their life, it is cathartic, introspective. What was it like for you on a personal level to really dig deep?
My father died when I was 5 years old. The book is dedicated to my paternal grandmother, his mother, and my mother, who was, at that point, a double widow with 2 sons by 2 different fathers. And those are the 2 women who shaped and governed my upbringing, my childhood. And both of them were inveterate, nonstop, emotional storytellers. So when I sat down to write this book about my life, I said to myself, okay, do this the way your mother and your grandmother would have done it. And if you can do that, and you can sustain that kind of feeling all the way throughout, you'll have a book that is worth reading. And that's exactly what I did.
This is your heart.
That's my heart. That is the soul of me, the heart of me, in 272 pages, in the one thing I best know how to do, communicating in the English language.
When you started, excuse me, when you started down the path of broadcast journalism, what did your mom think? Did she want you to go that direction, or was she hoping you'd?
My mother grew up or I grew up. My mother grew up in an illiterate household in Nashville, Tennessee, so I don't know where she got it. Long before her time, she was a New Yorker, Vanity Fair, Sunday New York Times subscriber. She did every crossword puzzle. She did all of the other mind games and things of that nature. She began infusing me with all that when I was a sophomore, junior, senior in high school in Miami. So she would always have wanted me to be doing something with language. And eventually, I won the 1974 talent hunt for the first college-age reporter on the sideline of ABC Sports College Football. She lived another 11 years from that moment forward till her death after her fourth open heart surgery in 1985. And in those 11 years, she got to see me graduate from the sideline to the studio on college football, got to see me graduate from doing all the crazy Wide Worlds to being the studio host of Wide World, got to see me host Olympics in Sarajevo and Los Angeles in 1984. So by the time she died, she had, I'm sure, fulfilled all of her inner dreams and ambitions for me, and they all had to do with language and storytelling, which was something that was so important to her.
So special that she got to be there for those mile markers in your career.
I have a poignant but special background. I mean, everything that was a curse to me, my father's death, the difficulties my mother had to face, my grandmother's nonstop talking, et cetera, all those things became enormous blessings to me.
Yeah. You mentioned the Olympics, Sarajevo and Los Angeles, but you covered 14 Olympics. That's a record, isn't it?
So I'm told.
Yeah, 14,
The people
come on.
who count these things say that no other American sports commentator went to more than 14. I did have 14 network assignments at the Olympics, and it was an unbelievable privilege that all that took place.
I'm just trying to go to one, Jim. You went to 14. Does one stand out?
Get it worked out somehow.
Yeah, I hope so. Does one stand out more than the rest?
Well, interestingly, it's kind of an offbeat choice, but first of all, my eldest daughter is one of the most important people in my life also. She was 4 years old at the time of the Winter Olympics in Sarajevo. That was the first Olympics that she went to. To be in the exotic city of Sarajevo, in an exotic place in the world, partying at night in the same hotel suite where Archduke Ferdinand of Austria had slept before Gavrilo Princip shot him on the bridge the following day, to have all those things converge. And then for my daughter to become what she has become in all the years since then, one of the most prominent art executives in the whole world. Those memories stand out for me. And that was the first Olympics at which I was in the host studio. I was the co-host of the late night show in Sarajevo with Kathleen Sullivan, a thrillingly talented studio television performer. And so, there are a lot of things. It's like I say, it's a counterintuitive choice. You didn't think I was going to say Sarajevo, but for me, personally, that's it. And then Innsbruck, the 1976 Winter Olympics, those were my first. So, your first time is always the one that in some ways will stick in your head. To walk down the street outside our hotel to a restaurant with O.J. Simpson, to walk down the street of our hotel to a restaurant with Jackie Stewart, the world Formula One champion, in Europe where he was much more mobbed than, say, O.J., et cetera. I had a lot of fabulous experiences in Sarajevo. And then, forgive me, I was not supposed to be at the Miracle on Ice in 1980, but at the last minute I was sent there for a last-minute assignment by the genius Rune Arledge, who was known for his golden gut and called me away from doing something else. Go over to the ice hockey arena. I have a feeling something unusual is going to happen. Millions and millions of Americans still believe to this day that they watched the Miracle on Ice live. They did not. They saw it on tape. I saw it live. Because I got sent at the last minute and ended up interviewing Mike Ruzioni and Jim Craig on the main street of Lake Placid. So, as you can tell, I'm taking up time here. I have too many good stories, to to just cull out 3 or 4 or something and say, these are the ones. My whole life has been an unpredictable cavalcade of things that everybody calls them incredible now. The word is badly overused, but they're at least unusual and striking experiences for me.
Unique, right?
And unique, yes. Another overused word, but in this case, it is in fact correct. Yes.
Good job.
Yeah, I've been around boxing a little bit. It's a colorful world, a unique world, if you will.
I will.
Yes. Tell me some of the characters and some of the stories from over the years, some of the things that people didn't see behind the scenes that you were privy to.
Father died when I was 5 years old. The very first sports event my mother ever sat me down to watch with express instructions. Marched me down a hallway at a neighbor's house. They're having a cocktail party or something of that nature. Put me in front of a tiny TV set on a TV dinner tray and said, sit here. You're going to watch the Friday night fights, Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson for the middleweight championship of the world. You're going to do this because if your father was still alive, this is what he'd be doing, and you'd be doing it with him. That was my introduction to boxing. From there, I started watching Friday night fights on Gillette, week after week after week, over and over and over. Became deeply immersed in all of the boxing stars of the late 50s. In 1960, watching the Rome Olympics on CBS, I saw a middleweight gold medal aspirant from Louisville, Kentucky, whose name was Cassius Clay. And when I saw Cassius Clay, I fell in love. Because I was ardently in love at that moment with 2 things. Number 1 being sports, especially boxing. And number 2 being race relations. How it was that my mother, a relatively poor Irish girl from a household in Memphis, Tennessee, where they did not know how to pronounce the word Negro, how she became an ardent, inveterate civil rights advocate who taught me all through my teenage years, the one thing you will never do or feel is anything racist. You will always be devoted to equal rights, et cetera, et cetera. So Cassius Clay arrives packaged with a bow on as a hero for me. He was perfect. And that began my deep and ardent romance with him, which already fit into what I had begun with, watching Sugar Ray Robinson against Bobo Olson in 1955.
Muhammad Ali's been covered so widely, but having access to him away from the cameras, you're there with the camera a lot of the time, but away from the cameras, what is something that you saw in him that people would enjoy knowing about him?
In 1988, I was Master of Ceremonies for the United States Boxing Writers Association dinner at Trump's Hotel on 34th Street, just below Grand Central Station in New York. It's the annual convention-style get-together of boxing media and fighters and all of the important people from boxing. And I was the Master of Ceremonies of what was going to be a long evening, and Muhammad was there because a friend of mine named Tom Hauser had just finished writing the definitive biography of Muhammad Ali, and I think it's still the definitive biography to this day. And Ali was there to sign books, kind of like I'm here in the wild card to sign books today. And there came a time during the day, I was divorced from my second wife, Joanne. My eldest daughter, at that moment 8 years old, was still living in Manhattan. I had brought her down with me saying, it'll be a long day, but you'll enjoy it, etc. She and I were in the green room. I wound up with a need to go out and run some errands in traffic in Manhattan. Need somebody to watch Brooke while I'm gone, and Ali stuck up his hand. Give her to me. So she wound up spending most of the rest of the day and evening with him. Card tricks, magic tricks, just sitting and talking, etc. It was unreal. And at the end of the evening, we said goodbye. He gave her a hug and a kiss. We got into the cab to go up to her mother's apartment in the dark. A third of the way to her mother's apartment, she says, "Dad, who was that guy?" I said, "Well, Brooke, you're going to grow up. You're going to read about him. You will know. I will steer you to all the right sources, et cetera, et cetera." And it's large and it's complicated. But what I'll give you to take to bed tonight is he's the most famous man in the world. And there's no legitimate dispute. No one can push back on that. I could tell you all the reasons, but just trust me, he's the most famous man in the world. She thought for a second. She said, you mean to tell me that I spent 7 or 8 hours in the company of the most famous man in the world? I said, yes, you did. So that made an impression on her. And I'm not going to say it was the only thing that gave her the impression that she's special, but it definitely gave her an underlying impression, or maybe an overt impression, that she was special and that she was going to do special things. And then she went to several Olympics with me, and she met the biggest stars at the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now she's arguably the most influential art dealer in the world. Now, maybe she would have been the most influential art dealer in the world anyway without meeting Muhammad Ali, but I'm not sure of that. I'm sure that she did become the most influential art dealer in the world, and she met Muhammad Ali as an 8-year-old.
That's unbelievable.
It is,
And it's
but it
really,
happened.
it is unbelievable. Over the years at Sotheby's, has she come across any Muhammad Ali-inspired art?
She's been exposed to a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
And when she was global chairman of fine art at Sotheby's, she saw a lot of it. And now that she's running a gallery organization, she sees a lot of it too. So she's well aware, and she knows the standard stuff like Leroy Neiman, and she knows other artists who are not as well known as Neiman. And yeah, she's got a handle on that to go along with Picasso and Degas and all that kind of stuff too.
For all of the personal experiences that you have collected over this incredible career, and the memories and the moments, were you ever one to say, hey, it'd be great if you could sign this glove or take this picture? Was that something that
Never.
Never?
Never. I think the athletes understood and knew that I admired them. Every athlete has a slightly different kinetic response to that kind of thing. Some of them see an agenda, they wonder if you're going to sell it or something like that. So I just never wanted to make anybody feel even the slightest bit uncomfortable. I've never asked for a souvenir. Usually, if I take a photograph with a famous athlete, it's because they say, can we have a picture together? I'm always very flattered by that, but I don't ask them. And at the end of the day, I have what I have. I have my very graphic memories of all the personal experiences I had with them. I can still put myself into a room with Mike Tyson. I can put myself into a room with Muhammad Ali. I can put myself into a bar drinking on 3rd Avenue in New York with Reggie Jackson. I can put myself in the Laker locker room with Magic Johnson. What an amazing experience that was. So I have what I have, and it's in here, and it happened.
Before you wrote it down here, did you journal? Did you keep track of things? It's all up there.
No. And when I was getting ready to write the book, I thought, okay, you should sit down and write an outline. You should make a list of all the things you want to include. You should be sure you know the inventory before you sit down to write the book. And when I was thinking of that, the next thing I thought was, no, your mother and your grandmother didn't do that. That's not the way they told stories at all. And if you're going to be lyrical, if you're going to touch people's hearts, you have to get as close to them as you can, because that's your heart. So I wound up writing the book from stream of consciousness. I did not make an outline. I did not take a note. I would sit and write everything that I felt like writing that day, that my mind had told me I needed to write that day. And then when I finished, I would lie down at night, put my head on the pillow and think, okay, what am I going to write tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And I would connect myself to a few catchphrases or names or things of that nature, and then sit down the next day and let it flow. So at the end of the day, I didn't look back and summarize until I was done. And when I looked back, I went through the book and said, all right, is this my mother and my grandmother? And it is. So that's what I did.
What is next? You've done it all. You've literally done it all.
Well, there's danger in that, that's for sure. I'm now back to calling fights at ringside. I sort of expect that I'm probably going to be calling fights again for a while. Within this new boxing economy that originates in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with a sheikh named Turki al-Sheikh, who's now functionally my superior, etc. So another Brave New World, the latest Brave New World in the long and kaleidoscopic career. So I'm going to be doing that, and then within the past 2 nights, my wife could tell you, I've already started thinking of the next book, because it's such a seductive experience in a lot of ways, and because coming out and talking to people like you has been so much fun.
I knew you were going to say you had another book in the pipeline. I knew it.
There are a lot of things that I didn't put in, and they all, a lot of them are also wow type stories. So yeah, there's probably another book in there if I wanted to do it. Let's see if this one sells, and then we'll figure that out.
I have a feeling it's going to do very well.
I hope so.
I want to ask you, going back into the boxing realm and calling fights, do you feel the love from the people that are so excited to see you back in that role?
Boxing people are the best people in the world. And one of the things I always say to people who are uninitiated, people who are only partially initiated, one of the things I instruct is you have to understand that boxing is a sport about love. The core of it is this bond of respect and appreciation and mutual understanding and coming from difficult circumstances, getting from nowhere to somewhere, which almost all of them are trying to do. So they empathize with each other in a huge way. And I always say to relatively uninitiated fans, if you watch a 12-round fight in which 2 guys seem to be trying to beat each other to death, sustained punishment, mayhem, round after round, what's really happening is that they're falling in love. Because by the time the bell rings at the end of the 12th, instantaneously they realize there's nobody else in the world who knows them as well as this person does. This person has tasted their blood. This person has tasted their sweat. This person has explored my limits and seen how far I can go and how much I can take. So when they fall into each other's arms at the end of the 12th round, that's real. That's love. And I've seen it over and over and over. And it is the most misunderstood thing about boxing. When we go to the International Boxing Hall of Fame in spring and see that fraternity and see the bonds and see how much these people love each other, it is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever seen.
That was poetic.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, I love boxing. Okay, and I mean, and if you want to get something poetic and touch my heart, boxing is where it starts.
Last question for you, because I know we got to wrap up. What era of boxing is your favorite?
I was introduced to what I thought of as a great era in the 1950s because it was largely defined by Sugar Ray Robinson, whom many, maybe most ring critics would call the greatest fighter of all time. And I saw a lot of his fights. So that sticks out for me. I was passionately in love with Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali, and the very first live prize fight I ever attended was Cassius Clay versus Sonny Liston, Miami Beach, February 25, 1964. So that era sticks out for me all the way through the 70s, the Ali era. I wound up being, to a large degree, blood brothers with George Foreman, and so that takes us into the 70s and the 80s. I worked with and was best friends for a while with Ray Leonard. So I connect to virtually every decade. Oh, by the way, the very first live prize fight I ever called on television was a Mike Tyson fight. And Mike and I are still very friendly, loving, bonded to this day.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jim Lampley.